Coming up in This Week in Computer Hardware, HomePod, the 5K iMac Pro actually ain't that expensive, MacBook update, where's Threadripper, and an 8K monitor from Dell. All that and more coming up next on TWiCH.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiCH.
Bandwidth for TWiCH is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 418, recorded June 8th, 2017. HomePod and MacBooks and Threadripper, oh my.
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by iFixit, the free online repair manual for everything. Before you start your next build or fix, head over to iFixit.com and check out their high-quality parts, tools, and guides. For $5 off of your purchase of $10 or more, go to iFixit.com/twit and enter the code TWiCH at checkout.
Welcome to TWiCH, This Week in Computer Hardware, TWiCH's weekly show that aims to bring you the most useful, most informative, most engaging, most delightful, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, this week, most Apple-filled hardware news, except for the news about Threadripper and other things, anywhere, anytime, anyplace. I'm Patrick Norton, joined as always by Mr. Ryan Shrout, who technically isn't always here, but is here today. And I gotta say, this man may be more excited about Apple's HomePod than anyone I can think of in the planet.
Yeah? Huh.
I'm
probably not.
I'm completely lying.
Yeah. So I don't even, let's be perfectly honest here. Was this, I don't even know. I didn't follow it. This part of the announcement. What did they brand this as Siri with a speaker or a speaker? Oh, and also it does Siri. What was it actually targeting?
Well, it's funny because I was talking about this. You may notice I'm in the Tested podcasting room, the Tested.com podcast room, and I was just talking about this with Jeremy Williams from Tested, and I was teasing him because HomePod's so late. He's really excited about HomePod. He's an Apple Music subscriber, so now I know one of the 27 million people that subscribes to Apple Music. I spend a lot more time on Spotify and Tidal, especially Spotify. Spotify is amazing, but you've essentially got. Siri has a bad rep. Apple Music is growing. Apple needs to be in the, I can talk to my stuff home automation space, the speech recognition. And so they could, do like the Siri Model 1000, but instead they came up with the HomePod, which is, it's kind of fascinating to me when I look at it from a design standpoint, because it looks so much like, if you're not familiar with Ultimate Ears, right? They do amazing wireless speakers. And the Roll 2 is one of the best buys out there. It's like $65 for a fantastic portable waterproof Bluetooth speaker. And not too long ago, they came out with the Wonder Boom, which looks kind of like a, lozenge pill-shaped thing. And if you put a pump into the Wonder Boom and then sand it off the plus and minus, you would end up with something that looks a lot like the HomePod. And the HomePod's, from an engineering standpoint, I'm very curious to hear it in real life from an audio geek standpoint,
sure.
Because they're doing, beam forming. They're sort of aware of the room. They're going to be tuning the audio to the room. The idea is that anywhere you sit in the room is going to sound amazing because they have the 7-tweeter array and this big honkin' 4-inch high excursion woofer. This is all good. The 7-tweeter array, I'll be very curious to hear what the audio processing sounds like. Early reports from people are like, it sounds amazing. It sounds better than the Echo. Well, the Amazon Echo costs half as much. And Amazon was kind of like, yeah, I guess we should have a speaker in there. So they put a speaker in there, not to, to diss the Amazon engineers, but audio fidelity was not something they were really going for. So Apple's kind of, well, we're a couple years behind Echo and we're a year behind Google Home. So we're going to build a Sonos killer that uses Siri for, the interaction and this amazing audio experience. And it's $350. So I will be, it's supposed to be auto sensing, so you can tweak the audio based on the room, or if you just add another HomePod, it should do it automatically. It's not supposed to be, the only thing it's listening for is, hey, Siri. Then it's going to start listening to what's going on. I love the fact that it's supposed to, automatically analyzes the acoustics and adjusts the sound based on the speaker's location and steers the music in the optimal direction.
Okay.
So I'll be curious, from an audio standpoint, a Sonos Play 1 is a fantastic sounding speaker for the money.
I have a couple of those, and I have a couple of 5s throughout my house, and they are prohibitively expensive for the average consumer to really invest in, and I fully admit that.
I don't know about prohibitively expensive.
Well, I mean, you're talking the same price as this, right? $350 to $400 for the Play 5.
Well, Sonos Play 1 is $200.
Yeah,
Play 5,
but it has a very. Is this more comparable to the Play 1 than the Play 3 or 5? I guess.
I think it's going to be somewhere around the Play 3. I will say for most people, a single Play 1 or a pair of Play 1s, a pair of Play 1s in stereo is a fantastic audio experience. And this is from somebody who has literally like 3 sets of speakers he's playing around with, in the warehouse space. A set of Vandersteens. I'm like tweeter rolling on a pair of Klipsch speakers. So I'm like, I get it. Right. I'm an audio geek. I got a $600 set of headphones in my bag. The Sonos Play 1 is a fantastic piece of hardware. It doesn't go as low as I'd like it to, but it's an amazing piece of engineering. And also one of the first times I ever heard anybody ever talk about the idea that they would be doing this sort of long excursion or high excursion woofer, where the woofer can go a spectacular distance to kind of help generate those deep tones. There's an A8 chip inside of this. There's wireless inside of this. There's a 6 microphone array inside of this. So it looks beautiful. Although again, I think it looks a lot like a UE product, which is, I guess, a compliment to UE. If Apple's going to design something and makes it look like what you already built, that's pretty impressive. Something I didn't realize is Apple Music is up to 40 million songs, which is, like 10 million more than Spotify, maybe 15 million more than Tidal. So I may give Apple Music another shot. Last time I played around with it, it was just a frustrating interface. But the HomePod is the thing about the HomePod is it's the gateway for getting Siri into your house, right? Because it's got HomeKit integration. It's using AirPlay 2, which I'm going to be very curious to see, that roll out. But, you're going to be able to ask Siri lots of questions. Hey, Siri, play the Moana soundtrack next. Hey, Siri, who's the drummer in this song? Hey, Siri, what's the most popular song in 1983? It's really funny when you scroll way down on the homepage page, way down. When you start getting, when you're deep in the weeds, keep going. There it is. Listen to what else it can do, right? That's when they start talking about, oh yeah, it's Siri. It's a hub for controlling your smart home accessories from a single light bulb to the whole house with the power of your voice. So, timers, clocks, measurements, translations, news, sports, weather, traffic. Hey Siri, turn on the lights. Hey Siri, lower the shades. Hey Siri, cool the room. So, everything that works with HomeKit platform, they now have a central thing to control it in your house that is not your phone, which is exactly why they did something that competes in this space with Google Home and Amazon Echo. So I'll be very curious. It's $350. It's going to be shipping later this year. I will probably have to buy one to review it, which does not make me happy, but it's interesting. And it's a lot more expensive than Google Home or than Amazon's Echo. And I think that's going to be fine for the Apple user base, and I think that's all they really care about. I mean, it's been funny because there's been a lot of people like, oh, it sounds so much better than Amazon's Echo. Well, Amazon's Echo, the speaker is an afterthought. Really is. Amazon Echo was all about getting Amazon's, voice technology into your house. The fact that it has a speaker, they were like, well, I guess since we have a speaker, we may as well play music. I was in Best Buy last week, and I think they were selling Google Homes for like $130. So this is like, twice the price, almost twice as expensive. It's $110. So it's like 3 times expensive as a Google Home. It's like twice as expensive as an Amazon Echo. You could get an Echo Dot and plug it into some speakers, which is not the same thing. But,
No.
you know, you've got the Echo Show for $230 and it's got a screen inside of it. So, you know, it's a classic Apple product. We're going to try to create something that's best in breed. And I think it's really interesting that they're going to try to use it looks like they're trying to use the Apple Music user base to ease Siri into the home in a way that they probably can't do on the phone, because so many people's initial experience with Siri on the phone was like, ugh. So,
yeah,
not too judgmental. But yeah, so I thought HomePod was really interesting. You know, the iMac Pro 5K. I think PC Gamer, ZDNet was reporting, I think PC Gamer did a comparison of the iMac Pro 5K where they spec'd out a PC and a similarly, a monitor, like an LG monitor of similar quality. And they came out with a price that was only about $300 less than the iMac Pro 5K, and would not nearly, you know, would be a separate case, a separate monitor, a bigger enclosure. The aesthetics wouldn't be as nice. So when you look at the iMac Pro 5K, starting at $5,000 with an 8-core processor and 32 gigabytes of EEC RAM, you know, it sounds ridiculously expensive until you realize A, how expensive a 5K monitor is, and B, you know, how expensive Xeon processors are. You know, I think it's a really curious product because it's really powerful. You can run 128 gigabytes of RAM in the top configurations. You can have 18 cores on it.
Right.
You know, somebody was joking. Norm, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What would Norm say?
I was saying, like, Norm was joking, like, "Oh, I'll build you a workstation for $7,000," and all I could think is, like, I'm looking at my, you know, 8-core, 16-thread, you know, AMD Ryzen 1800X and thinking, like, yeah, I built this whole system for less than $1,000. Now I don't have as much memory and it's not EEC, but I don't care about a Xeon processor, and there's just a tiny subset of users that really need the added expense of a Xeon processor and ECC RAM. The people who do absolutely totally need it, but that's a really small market.
I agree. I think it. You know, the new iMacs were interesting because they're basically the same form factor. They have they start at, I think, $1099 now or $1299, something like that. They're significantly lower prices, but they're quad core parts. They're using RX 580s essentially, or up to an RX 580. The iMac Pro also is going to be the first to offer up to an 18-core processor in it and RX Vega. So this is a December launch timeframe, but there's a significant amount of TDP that needs to be cooled in this all-in-one. That I'm very curious to just see from an engineering standpoint how they're able to do it, right? And that kind of profile, you have an 18-core Xeon processor that's probably 165 watt TDP, something along those lines, and then your GPU is probably going to be 200 at least, maybe up to 250, just depending on what configuration they go with. So a lot of powerful hardware, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do for cooling, right? And then how much more the 18-core is going to cost versus the 8-core as well.
There's an animated GIF floating around. There it goes. Actually, if you keep scrolling down from that, look for the part where it says Advanced Thermal Management. Keep going. If you're watching the video, this is exciting stuff. You know, but they've got dual blowers, a huge heat sink, a ton of venting, and it shows if you sit on that JPEG. There you go. Scroll down a little bit more. Almost there. Right there. Stop.
There it is.
And wait. No, there it is. Go back up. There you go. And wait. Right there. There it is. And it shows how it's going to be basically sucking air through the bottom and venting air but down through the center. So, you know, they've done some interesting stuff with thermal management on this. I'll be curious how loud it is when you start really corking things up to high speed. You know, but you know, it looks like they've kind of got it all sorted out. You know, a bunch of big vents. I mean, I was laughing, and we'll talk about it later in the show. I was on Tech Thing this week. I reviewed Dell's 8K UltraSharp 32 monitor this week, and you know, it turns out like 33 million point something pixels. You have a tremendous number of transistors, so you have a tremendous amount of venting on that monitor. You're not going to keep your coffee warm, but you put your hand over the monitor, you're like, wow, this is hot. That's all passively cooled. With this, you know, it's Apple. I'm sure they did the engineering to make sure that this doesn't sound particularly loud. But you know, look at the size of those huge vents that they're driving the air through and down through the processor. I'll be very curious to see what it looks like in real life. You know, the top of the line configurations are going to be bracing. I think you can top out at like the number that comes to mind was $16,000.
Oof.
You know, but you're also, again, this is Xeon money, and
right.
you know, when you're talking about, you know, what are essentially server processors and ECC, you know, and professional grade GPUs, you're spending a lot of money. Period.
Mm-hmm.
It just is the nature of the beast, especially if you get like 128 gigabytes of RAM. But again, like I said, you know, it was where did it go? Well, PC Gamer, right? They did a build with a Intel Xeon E5 2620 V4 2.1 gigahertz 8-core processor. That's a $408 processor, $160 for the CPU cooler. You know, it's almost $700 for an X99 motherboard, $253 in memory. And this is just for the entry level version, right? But you know, 32 gigabytes of ECC RAM. That's $250 in memory. You know, they're $500 or $479 for a 1 terabyte solid state drive, $700 for a 1080 Ti. You know, it adds up, and it ends up being, you know, building it to going DIY is only about $300 less than Apple's price. So Apple's being competitive with this, you know. But you know, if I take an AMD Ryzen system, for example, the one that's, you know, sitting on my desk at work, I'm going to get similar performance for everything but a very tiny subset of applications, and I'm going to do it for a fraction of the price. It is what it is, you know. You know, I like the space gray. It's got that kind of Death Star thing going for it.
I think I saw that they said they were not going to sell those accessories separately either. You had to buy the Mac Pro, the iMac Pro, in order to get them.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's, you know,
that's what's going to draw me in, though.
You know, the other thing that was kind of in there, and they didn't spend a lot of time emphasizing on it, was the Kaby Lake upgrades for the MacBooks. You know, so you're finally getting Kaby Lake on the MacBooks. You know, they're talking about SSD updates that'll deliver like up to 50% more performance, which makes me wonder if they're doing NVMe or if they're doing some, you know, some other changes inside of there. You know,
it seems pretty much like a simple refresh to Kaby Lake on those. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think they needed to do much more than that. They need a little bit more performance and a little bit more battery life.
Yeah.
You know, the one that was TechCrunch had a really interesting article. The line from Brian Heater was, that new keyboard is the key to Apple's MacBook update. And you know, they basically said Apple now uses the same butterfly switches from the MacBook Pro in the MacBook. I'm going to quote Mr. Heater and say, "It no longer feels like typing on a flat piece surface. As much as I tried, I couldn't make it work. This time out, the difference is clear almost immediately." So you know, that's a non-trivial upgrade to the very slim MacBooks, is that they're getting a better keyboard, they're getting a better processor. So that's nice. That's nice. So
yeah, agreed.
And Apple's moving into the VR space. You know, they got a 580 and a toaster that developers can pick up for $600. And they're getting serious about VR, and HTC Vive is running. So
yeah. One of the interesting things about the AR VR is just, you know, not that they showed the demo was pretty good, but not that it was fundamentally anything over, you know, what we've seen before. But if Apple does it right and rolls it out like kind of as an OS wide thing, they will overnight become the largest potential AR VR platform that exists, right? Because, you know, despite Android having done this for a much longer time, the number of phones that support Daydream, the number of phones that run the latest version of Android is pretty minimal, whereas with iOS, it's always significantly higher. So they have the potential to kind of catch up to the market of Samsung and Google very, very quickly if they decide to be aggressive with it and push it out that way.
Nothing wrong with getting aggressive. Speaking of aggressive, moving in a completely different direction, G.Skill memory used in world record-breaking DDR4 5500 megahertz overclock. Just a little something, a little trailing news from Computex. So G.Skill had a overclocking competition there, and DDR4 memory overclocked at 5500 megahertz. Professional overclocker Top C broke his 5000 megahertz record from last year with a new overclock that was accomplished on Intel's X299 platform. Tim's got the write-up on PC Per on that. And, of course, he was using, quote, copious amounts of liquid nitrogen.
I think it's an interesting move by Intel to, like, allow and promote these types of things. Like, there was a overclocking competition using, Skylake X, Kaby Lake X, and X299, where they got the Kaby Lake X part up to like 7.8 gigahertz or something like that, where the previous Intel architecture record was like 7.2 gigahertz, and then you've got these memory things being shown. It's definitely it's an attempt to get the enthusiast attention back on them. It had been moved over to AMD Ryzen and AMD Threadripper since those announcements, and AMD or an Intel definitely wants to kind of refocus, readjust everybody's gaze to the left a little bit to remember that Skylake X is coming, and those are coming soon, and they announced parts and what benefits they may offer. So this is just kind of part of, I feel like this is part of that window that Intel's trying to create for themselves for the month of June.
Yeah. And what's happening in June with Intel?
Well, they announce all those parts at Computex. They're going to come out sometime. It's just a matter of which ones will come out. Are we going to get the 18 core, the 4 core? What in between will launch at what point? There was rumors that 18 core was going to be next year. I'm told it's definitely not going to be next year. It's just a matter of when it will be. There's still 6 months left of 2017, as it turns out. So just saying it'll be this year is not a very comforting thought for people that may be interested in those parts.
Meanwhile, we're still waiting for a release date for Threadripper.
It's that one is an interesting one too. They said this summer, but they didn't really go into any more details. They did announce. Let's see, they announced RX Vega would launch at the end of July at SIGGRAPH. It would be interesting if AMD were to try to do both their new GPU architecture and their new high-end desktop platform. Kind of, I hope they don't do them in tandem, but if you do that a week apart or 2 weeks apart, that's a pretty aggressive stance, both against Intel on the CPU side and against NVIDIA on the GPU side. Creates a lot of work on our side and making sure we have all the best information for consumers as they go to look to buy stuff. But that would be my guess, is that Threadripper would be sometime end of July, first half of August. But that's just a guess at this point. So Intel's going to have some of their Skylake X parts out before them, but not the majority of them would be my guess. So there's still going to be this race to the highest core count available for sale that we kind of thought was going to happen when we saw these rumors begin. So,
do we have any updates on when the Pro Vega stuff is going to come out? The 64, the Vega 56.
You're talking about the like the Frontier Edition stuff. The Frontier Edition is June 27th, right? So 19 days from now, that's supposed to launch. But I don't know if they are, if it's like a launch where they're going to start shipping to partners, or they're going to show up in retail. They haven't announced pricing of those graphics cards yet. That they've been very upfront about this is their, maybe even they've positioned a little bit higher than the Titan brand, where this is very much aimed at content creators and stuff like that. Not really meant for gamers, but there will always be those crazy people that are willing to spend $2,000 or whatever it's going to be on a graphics card for their games, especially if they know they're going to be the first one with the RX Vega in their system. There's some bragging rights to have that. So I don't know. I don't really know what AMD's plan is going to be for that launch. If they're going to, solicit reviews and try to put parts out there and see what they do, or, pretty much just free for all. And if you can get your hands on one, you can test it. So I don't know what that's going to be. So I would expect the vast majority of content and testing and reviews on this will be forced to wait till the end of July.
That makes sense. A couple more things from Computex. Asus shows off its flagship ROG Zenith Extreme 399 motherboard. I'd like to apologize for the way I said Zenith Extreme 399 motherboard, or X399 motherboard. This thing is a beast. 24-pin ATX, 28-pin EPS 12 volts, a Molex connector for extra PCIe power.
If you zoom in on that socket, have you focused on the socket size of this platform? It's nearly the length of the DIMM slots.
Big.
Right? It's massive. There's no retention arms. There's 3 screws to put the socket back down. It's
that's
going to be unique.
TR4 socket. It's
yeah.
Well, you know, I'm curious. There's a lot of. I believe they are anticipating an extraordinary amount of thermal dissipation going on when you use that TR4 socket is huge. 8 DIMM slots on that. You know, there's a big old aluminum heat spreader sitting on top of the power phases. 4 PCI Express 3x16 slots, 1 PCIe 3x1 slot, 1 PCIe by 4 slot. There's 1 M.2 slot under the X99 chips, heatsink chipset, a U.2 connector, and 6 SATA 6 gigabit per second ports. And quote, there is also a riser board by the rightmost DIMM slot that reportedly holds 2 M.2 22.110 connectors. Gigabit Ethernet, ROG 10 gigabit Ethernet. By the way, I didn't even mention it, 10 gigabit Ethernet on the iMac Pros.
Right.
802.11.80 Wi-Fi. You know, some really nice audio thoughts on that one. Expected sometime in August. No word on exact pricing, but I think I feel comfortable in saying the pricing on this will be breathtaking, as well it should be for a motherboard like that. And Gigabyte announced their X299 Aorus?
Aorus. I'm going to go with Aorus.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Aorus. I like that.
Right.
Yeah, so there's the Aorus Gaming 7, the Aorus Ultra Gaming, the Aorus Gaming 3. So there's a ton of Intel Core X Series CPU options out there. You know, these are actually, the Eagle's a little strange because it looks like the Eagle's holding a fist underneath itself on the heat the heatsink spreader on that one. It's an unusual graphic, but I'm kind of liking the copper. The copper details are kind of amusing me on this one. Or maybe they're just yellow LED lights. But
I think it might just be lights. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think it's just lighting.
Hard to tell because when you look at the next picture down on that, everything's purple. Including what looks like, it looks like the DIMM slots have purple lighting underneath them. So go to PCPro to get a closer look at that if you're deeply fascinated by motherboard lighting. You know, triple M.2 slots, dual gigabit LAN, killer 1535 Wi-Fi on board, RGB lighting effects, and some pretty badass audio on that one. 32-bit, 384 kilohertz ESS Saber DAC, an ES90 18, a TI Burr Brown op amp. This is audiophile grade stuff. Plus, apparently they're using like Japanese audiophile grade capacitors. This is a nice collection of stuff. It's not gonna be inexpensive, but this is also, it's like the return of the X99, where you're like, this sounds. How much is that motherboard? I feel really X299
is going to be expensive, no doubt. I'm also curious what X399, which is AMD's chipset for Threadripper, how it's going to compare cost-wise, because I think that's going to become a significant portion of the cost debate amongst these platforms.
Yeah. Again, the word breathtaking comes to mind. Speaking of breathtaking, Dell's 8K UltraSharp 32 monitor. I got to review this on techthing.com. It's actually just went up this morning. Man, a lot of thoughts going into this one. Okay, so first of all, I had to buy a $400 GPU. I had to pick up an RX 480, GTX 1070, or the entry level GPUs to power this thing, because you need both. You need a pair. This is so early 4K. You need a pair of DisplayPort 1.4 ports. Thankfully, both DisplayPort 1.4 cables are in the box. And if you do like I did, yank one out just to see what happens, you basically go from, you don't go to 8K 30 hertz, you go to 4K in terms of the rendering on that one. But it's the thing that sticks with me is not so much like, yeah, I can look at like a 35, 40 megapixel, raw file without using all this, without having to scale it at all.
Right.
This is, 8K is the equivalent of 4 4K monitors or 16 1080p monitors, assuming I can do math.
It's just nuts.
Somebody out there should check right now, because, I am an English major. But, this is 7680 by 4320, right? This is huge in terms of resolution. So you end up with Retina display levels of resolution. It's 280 pixels per inch. There's no HDMI port on this, because there's no point in having an HDMI port on this, because to drive it, again, you need all the bandwidth from those display ports. There's let me move my comma around here so I don't read this wrong. 33,177,600 pixels on this. So there's a whole lot of venting on the top and bottom of this. And you can run it in portrait and landscape mode. It's a 32-inch panel. And the
should have send you multiple, see if you could do 3 of them or something.
I don't have enough money to buy enough GPUs to do that. I don't have enough money to buy this monitor either. It's a $5,000 monitor. Gaming worked on it. I was amusing myself. I loaded up Rocket League, because that's the way I roll. And, Rocket League was automatically like 2560 by 1440, settings up pretty high. And then I ran it at 4K, which wasn't too bad. And at 8K, things are starting to look a little strained in terms of the refresh rate on the monitor. It just didn't feel quite right. But if you are an architect, an engineer, a Photoshop guru, if you live video editing, if you are, if you're one of those people that needs 7 panels open, so you can discreetly monitor all the feedback from a bunch of real-time generated graphs, and this is a beautiful, beautiful looking monitor. I mean, Premier Color, X-Rite calibration baked into the box. You have to buy the X-Rite calibrator separately. It's the thing that really amazed me is much like the first time you see an incredibly high resolution phone and you can no longer see the pixels. It's gorgeous. It is a gorgeous monitor. The colors are saturated. Everything looked good. I'm hoping for Robert Herring gets a chance to put his colorimeter on it to do some testing on that. But it's a beautiful monitor. This is not something you're buying, because you really like watching Netflix, although Netflix scales everything on it. But when you scale a compressed 1080p image, because the monitor is like this big, and 1080p in native is about that big in the middle of the monitor. It's like 4 inches diagonally on this crazy 32-inch flat panel. But if you're somebody who's like, I'm living in, I remember like one of the craziest apps I ever saw was an app for the engineers that build drilling platforms, offshore drilling platforms. And it's one of those applications where you literally, you would make a change and then a whole bunch of stuff would happen at the same time. The drawing would change, the materials list would change, it would update the database for the actual cost of the device, it would change inventory information and all this stuff. But that was an app where you were dealing with something so complicated you just couldn't throw enough resolution at it. So if you are one of those people that can never have enough resolution, this is the monitor you've been dreaming of. If you're thinking about 8K gaming, don't, because there's no 8K games. But the thing that started to after I got over to nobody needs this monitor, the more time I spent with this, the more I'm like, man, I could really get into a 280 pixels per inch pixel density just because it looks really good. So $5,000, if you're now wiping the spit off of your monitor in disgust at the expense of that. We looked at a couple of very lovely 1080p monitors from Dell that are right around $200. So, it's a pretty interesting piece of hardware. It's very forward looking. It is really gorgeous, and I'll try to get a little more technical and send something to you for PC Per on that one. It's a crazy piece of hardware.
Very cool. Yeah, I am jealous. I wanted to see that one soon. I'll bug somebody.
I'll send this back so they can maybe send it to you next. But man, yeah,
oh man, it accidentally went to Florence, Kentucky. Man, that's unfortunate. That's a shipping error on FedEx's part. We'll get that corrected within 2 weeks. See, this is how ask for forgiveness and permission. That's
yeah, and I never got a Dell monitor.
I won't do that to you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Won't do that to
you. See how it goes. Just need to send a spy into my warehouse. I'll taste some wine in Napa. Oh my goodness! This episode of This Week in Computing Hardware is brought to you by iFixit. I love iFixit. Not just because they're a sponsor. If you're familiar with iFixit, you know they really like to take stuff apart and teach people how to fix things. They are constantly posting teardowns and repair videos for popular devices like the Galaxy S8, iPhones, and the Switch. The crew at iFixit, they needed better tools to get the job done, so they created the iconic black and blue ProTech toolkit. Fully loaded, everything you need for your next fix or DIY project, and they've just dropped the price to $59.95. This is good stuff. It's sleek, it's stylish. Don't let the fact that somebody who actually pays attention to design put this together. It's got beauty and brawn. It's got high-quality steel bits. It's got tools tough enough to handle any repair or mod you throw at them. I can honestly say I've used this for everything from eyeglasses to toilets to PCs to laptops to children's toys, to actually repairing a set of headphones recently. It's a really amazing collection. It's all packed into a nice, easy-to-use tool roll. You can see it on your screen right now. The 64-bit driver kit has just about any bit you could ever need. And I love the fact that the case really keeps everything organized. It's a big step up from the older, from the previous ProTech toolkit, because all of the bits are wedged in place in foam there. The actual lid stays on magnetically. The entire collection of bits is held on by magnets to the tool roll. And if you pull that off, you've got a nice piece of magnetic material in there that you can toss your screws onto as you're pulling something apart. It's great. Swivel top magnetic precision driver feels good in the hand. A flex extension, which is also magnetic. It's incredibly useful if you're dealing with weird screws that are half hidden under the edge of a case or something. They've got a ton of plastic opening tools, spudgers, picks, a suction cup that makes it easy to remove displays off of phones. The Jimmy Pry tool, which is something that iFixit came up with, which is a flexible steel blade that makes it really easy to get into the edges of cases to crack them open. ESD-safe tweezers. There are no musical speakers in this, but there are tweezers. And an ESD safety strap so you don't destroy your job with static shock. iFixit tools backed by iFixit's lifetime warranty. This is cool. They want to make stuff that's not going to fall apart. I like that. You don't need to buy something to get iFixit's free repair resources. They got over 25,000 free repair guys over at iFixit.com. I really, if you're looking to fix something, do yourself a favor. Go to iFixit.com. Search there first because they put a lot of care. Their repair guides are amazing. They have gotten me through several terrible personal incidents involving MacBooks and iPhones and a few other things. It's worth going to. Want to tackle your next hack or fix or build with the ProTech Toolkit? We got a code that'll give you $5 off. Head over to iFixit.com/twit and use the code TWiCH. That's Twitch at checkout to save $5 on your purchase of $10 or more. And we want to thank iFixit for their support. A lot of good stuff over there. The repair manual, some great tools, lots of parts. iFixit.com. Go check it out if you've never been there. I can't believe you haven't been there yet. Go.
Indeed.
Oh man, we were lamenting this before the show started. Amazon Drive, unlimited storage option, gone, which is heartbreaking if you have a giant pile of stuff to store. This has been happening.
Now they're not taking this away from people that signed up for it, though, right?
No, but okay. You can no longer get it. So if you've been putting it off, you put it off too long.
Right.
For $60 a year, you would get unlimited storage. Now $60 a year gets you a single terabyte of storage space, which is a lot, but
it's
unlimited
$5 a month.
unlimited is much larger than 1 terabyte. Yeah, so $5 a month for a terabyte is pretty fantastic. And I want to say 30 terabytes. Oh, where does it go? Where does it go? Where does it go? I want to say they have a 50 terabyte upgrade, which of course is not appearing on the web.
So 30 terabytes is
another
$1,800 a year.
That is for the Amazon Drive. That is not.
Oh yeah. Yes. Okay. Interestingly, they still so if you're a Prime member, you still get unlimited photo storage on them, but a terabyte of just raw photos is a lot of pictures. So
it is a lot of pictures.
Yeah. So I mean, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't have an unlimited plan for $60 a year. Although I'm curious, like they say in this story from SlashGear, you'll continue to enjoy that unlimited capacity until your plan expires, after which point you may pay generously depending on how much data you've uploaded. So it sounds to me like you don't get the $60 per year going forward. You just get it to the end of your year, and then you have to make that decision of, well, how much did I actually put up on this Amazon Drive service, which apparently, if it were 30 terabytes, is $1,799.70 per year. But 30 terabytes is a significant online library of goods. So
yeah. So I've just logged into. So let's see. Okay, I'm going to view all the plans. I've just logged into my Amazon account because you can't actually look at it.
Oh,
this is This is. Maybe they are only doing that. Huh. This is.
Yep.
Wow. They must have been losing money hand over fist.
I mean, for $60 a year for unlimited storage, like I would have backed up our entire library of everything to it, probably. Flex Cloud support, yeah. Ken tells me from across the room would have been like a perfect use case for that. You've got 20 terabytes of media you want to upload for $60 a year. Sounds pretty amazing. As I look at the prices of hard drives, as we look to build like local arrays here, yeah, they would have been losing their ass on that for sure. Yeah.
But storage, like bandwidth, is practically free now.
Bandwidth, yeah.
I'm kidding.
Not storage though.
Man, yeah, that's horrible. That's
yeah.
I mean,
they're apparently not the only ones removing it. So
no,
1 terabyte's still.
That also means yes, a terabyte is a lot. But if you have like,
I think I pay $100 a year for 1 terabyte of Dropbox. So it's still less. You know, Amazon Drive is still less. I just have Dropbox kind of implemented with all of my systems already. So I didn't, I'm switching over for $40 a year isn't really worth it. But if you're just starting out, that still seems like probably the best option out there. There's all kinds of cloud things. Like if you have Office 365, you get like 1 terabyte free, I think, or included with your Office 365 subscription. Things like that too.
I also just realized my confusion was that somebody in another article had said up to 30 terabytes available for an additional $60, and it's actually $60 per terabyte. So.
Oh, okay.
So basically, every additional terabyte
different.
is an additional $60 per year.
Gotcha. So. No bulk discount.
Not even close. Man. Well, if you didn't sign up for it yesterday,
unlimited storage.
We hardly knew ye.
Nice. Yeah.
Oh man, you have you have spent extended quality time with the Google Pixel. How are you feeling about it?
Not so much me, but it was Sebastian. I did have one, and I have a Pixel XL here. I continue to believe that they are probably still the best Android option out there. And I think a lot of that actually comes from the software infrastructure that you get access to when you're on a Pixel device, where you get, apparently there's the exception of Verizon, but Verizon is still pushing it out very, very quickly, these OS updates at the at the pressure of Google. But the idea of like getting all the new operating system upgrades first, all the new features first, is a big plus for that. Now, it's obvious. It should be obvious to anybody who like follows this stuff. But if you don't, there are a lot of rumors circulating about the next iteration of Pixel hardware coming out relatively soon. Knowing all of that, and the fact that the Google Pixel and Pixel XL are like exceedingly difficult to buy, and they have been that way since day one when they launched, which is disappointing on Google's part for just not knowing how to run a product division, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. I feel like this happens for all of Google products, whether it be Wi-Fi or Chromecasts originally, and in these phones and tablets the same way. So it's a Snapdragon 821 based part. So it's one generation older than the 835 that's starting to circulate out. Type-C, but it's got like a fantastic camera, a 1080p screen. It's a pentile display, which is apparently one of Sebastian's triggers, where he's not real excited about that because there's added aliasing on black text on white backgrounds, which obviously happens a lot on websites these days. But performance is pretty good. But again, that's all in context of knowing that the Snapdragon 835 is out there, and the iPhone 7s and stuff were all released after this. So it does look a little bit aged in that regard. But again, this phone is, when did this phone come out? Almost a year ago, maybe a little bit more than a year ago now. Less than a year ago. Yeah. But still, like, I don't know. I hesitate to recommend anybody buy this at $900, knowing that there are other solutions coming relatively soon. But if you can find this, if you've got a buddy that's selling one used, or you find it at a pretty good deal, it's hard to go wrong with this, and substantial battery life benefits as well. The Pixel XL and the Pixel share the same hardware. So, and the one thing I will notice of having both devices for a little bit is that, in terms of like if you're doing gaming or VR through Google Daydream, which these phones support, which is a nice benefit as well, the Pixel XL is able to maintain a lower surface temperature because it has more area inside the device for cooling, which is interesting, right? So the performance drop off over time because of heating up of the hardware is less on the XL than it is on the base Pixel. But then I think the majority of that decision comes down to, do you want a giant phone or just a big phone? Because those are basically your options at this point. So good piece of hardware. Our review's a little bit late in the game, but it was mostly done for, we're preparing for all the new hardware coming out, and it was worth kind of giving a retrospective. I don't want to call it a retrospective because it's still less than a year old, but in the way hardware works, it's more or less that.
There you have it. What'd you think of the Dell XPS 13 2-in-1?
So that was, have you used this at all? The actual 2-in-1 variant of it? Yeah. So it's interesting in that the regular Dell XPS 13 still exists as a clamshell that, doesn't bend all the way back and is not a tablet convertible 2-in-1. This is the first XPS 13 that kind of takes in the 360-degree hinge. You can, it's the yoga-esque design where you can, put the screen on the back, use it as a tablet, all that type of stuff. It's still got the Infinity Edge display, which you can see in that photo there, which is really nice. It still has the camera at the bottom, which is not great. And in this case, it's actually in the middle. You can, yes. If you're going to do a call and you don't need to type anything or use a trackpad, then yes, you can tent it and have the camera face forward. But it is in the middle, so it's a little bit better than just off to the side this way. And also the two lenses in there, one of them is the IR camera used for depth sensing, used for Windows Hello, which Ken, who did the review, was actually really impressed with. The speed and accuracy and reliability of that login methodology. It's funny, the last couple of days I was using it and kind of messing around with it as I was editing his articles and stuff. And when I went to turn it on, I'd always have to I just go find Ken and I say, Ken, look at this laptop for a second, so that it would unlock, right? Rather than go in and change all the security settings. So I do wonder about that. Like if you have facial recognition on a phone, if somebody picks up your phone and just points it at your face for a second, and then they have unlocked your phone or whatever, Well, I mean, they've got pointed at your physical face, then they can run away with your unlocked phone. I don't know. It was just interesting.
They got to knock you out. Then they got to point the phone at your face.
Yeah, or if you're asleep, yes, they can. They can just. I guess they can do that with your fingerprint too if you're asleep. Just a little bit more difficult. The main primary hardware change in here. Oh, go ahead.
There we go. Yeah, I was about to say the Core i7 Intel the 7Y75 CPU.
Yes, and in fact, the one we had was the Core i5 7Y54.
Okay. And despite the
Core i5, Core i7 naming scheme, they're Core M parts. They're the 4.5 watt TDP Y series CPUs. So they are significantly lower power and thus lower performance over extended work, extended utilization methodologies, right? So, like I think this is a part where like the base clock speed is incredibly low, but the burst clock speed is incredibly high. So the Core i5 that we has a base of 1.2, but a max turbo of 3.2. So you're talking about a 2 gigahertz delta between the base and the max turbo. Now the base is the clock speed where it's kind of like guaranteed to not go below if you're doing extended workload. But a 1.2 gigahertz processor, dual core, in 2017 is going to be pretty slow. Right. So if you look at our benchmark pages and you look at things like Cinebench, or you look, yeah, and you look at anything that runs over a period of time, you're going to see that it's going to score pretty low because of it. But if you go down towards the bottom, you'll see some graphs where we actually recorded the clock speeds of the MacBook, which was last generation's Y series part, and then the XPS 13. And what you'll see is if you compare the blue graph to the orange graph, like the orange graph spends more time at its base clock speed at the lower speeds than the blue. And this is, I think this is running PC Mark. Is that right? And yeah, so this is running a PC Mark benchmark run. Now, you can see that, the orange spikes up to 3.5 gigahertz, whereas the blue, if you go up a little bit, only spikes up to like 2.5, maybe a little bit like 2.6 or 7 or so in a couple of rare cases. So what you'll find is in using the device for like web browsing or anything like that, it doesn't feel slow. It doesn't perform slowly because those are very bursty workloads where you touch the screen and scroll, but then pause, and then the clock speed goes back down. The whole idea behind this and speed shift and all of that and getting to the higher clock speed quicker is that you want lower average thermals so that you can make the device thinner, you can run at lower voltages, you don't have to worry about cooling as much. But the expense of that, at the expense of, hey, I have to do the odd video transcode on this machine, right? Or I've got this file on my network, I want to convert it to a file I can put on my iPad. My PC is the best thing to do this. My laptop is now my PC. Now you have to do this kind of extended workload, and you can see there that the MacBook Pro and the ThinkPad are doing that at significantly lower times than either of the Core M based or whatever you want to call them now.
Yeah, great day-to-day computer, horrible content creation. Like day-to-day, great. Content creation, not so much.
I'll also say that they put a pretty big battery in it, so the battery life is good. The power consumption is low. The hinges add a little bit of weight. They add a little bit of size to it. Not a lot. They did a good job on the engineering side of it. But you can get the non-touch. This starts at $12.99. You can get the normal XPS 13 starting at like $7.99 or $9.99, depending on what capacities and memory and all that stuff you want to get. So you're paying a little bit more for a system that I don't think really offers a whole lot. I'm not a user that sees a big benefit in the convertible, like the tablet part of this. The odd case where I'm flying and I want to watch a movie on it or something, and you can flip the keyboard to the base of it and it takes up less space or whatever, that's fine. But the XPS 13 2-in-1, okay, so there's one that starts at $9.99 with that. But, you're getting, so that's the Core i5s on the two on the left, the Core i7s are the two on the right. Yeah, 4 gigs of memory is what you go down to on that, right? And so 4 gigs of memory in today's age is a little bit minimalistic, 128 gig PCIe SSD. so it's not a bad product at all. I just wasn't wowed by it like I was when I first started playing with the XPS 13s. And I think, Dell basically thought that, that the Kaby Lake variant was their third iteration of the XPS 13, that they basically hadn't changed from day one, when the Broadwell one hit the scene and kind of wowed everybody immediately. They were trying to do something else. So the 2-in-1 is a good option for it. If you know you want a 2-in-1 convertible device, this is a fantastic implementation of it. But I feel like if you just want a laptop, I would look at the regular XPS 13 using the faster processors at lower prices before I really look at these. Yeah.
That just kind of trailed off.
That's it. Yeah,
no, we looked at one back in February, and it's like day-to-day computer, especially if you're into that tablet feel, or, you spend a lot of time on airplanes and you can use it in that tented mode in front of you. It's fantastic. If you have to do anything beyond, typing oriented, spreadsheety kind of, internet, email stuff, you're paying a pretty dramatic performance penalty. Fit and feels fantastic. Design looks good. It's a nice piece of hardware. But if, both of us spend a lot of time dealing with, rendering video and tweaking audio and stuff, and that makes it a little more painful. So worth mentioning on that one. Man, I thought these were pretty, so I wanted to get into the show. One last thing from Computex, Lian Li's AIO liquid coolers with raw copper radiators. An all copper loop, basically. The X-R240 expandable water cooling heat radiating system has a raw copper radiator surrounded by a metal shroud that houses 120 millimeter fan mounts and a pump, large removable tubing, and a thin nickel plated copper CPU water block. It's pretty. It's probably going to be really expensive, and I don't think there's going to be any real world performance boost, but even I can sometimes, once in a great long while, get excited about the aesthetics of something that has no, as far as we can tell, LED lights inside of it. From the completely unhinged motherboard department, Asrock, man, this is, Tim wrote this up for PC Per. H110 Pro BTC Plus motherboard with 13 PCI Express clocks, 13 PCI Express slots. LGA 1151 socket for Skylake CPUs, because quite frankly, the people that are going to buy this are buying it because they're currency miners. It's hysterical. 13 PCI Express slots, 2 slots for DDR4 DIMMs, a single M.2 port, and 4 SATA parts. So it has its goal. It is not general computing, that's for sure. It's interesting to look at that picture. There's not like a really good pic, but if you zoom in on that one on the side, or you click on it for a slightly bigger version, like keep in mind that those PCI Express slots do not line up with the back panels of a case, right? Like no case has 13 slots on the back of it. My guess is every third one might line up with the slot on the back of the case, if you were actually to put that in there for this. But this is meant to have those PCIe 1 ribbon cables to expand out for people who are mounting a bunch of video cards to shelving and whatever. They've got 1x16 in there for a display if you wanted to have one in there. Although in theory you could just use a buy one for that too. This is set up exactly for that. It would be perfect for it. My guess is that they will sell a whole lot of these to that particular audience if they can get them out the door and for sale relatively soon. It's impressive, I guess. What's happening? It's bad for people who want to buy GPUs to play games, but it's good for people who want to buy GPUs to make money, I guess. Yeah. Well, there you have it. I get something. It's going to be interesting. I have an installation of a new internet provider. Right, I've been using Comcast for years and years, and it turns out a company called Common Networks at common.net. They are doing their pilot program for wireless internet delivery. 50 megs up, 50 megs down. So symmetrical 50 megabytes, $50 a month, unlimited bandwidth. So it will be interesting to see how well this works out. It seems to be led by a bunch of people that worked at Square that decided to start this. So I wait with bated breath. So we'll see how well it works. A friend of mine got it installed a couple weeks ago and has had no issues. But we always talk about wanting to have options, and now there's an option, and I'm going to try the option that is not DSL. So yeah, wish me luck. I could be Comcast free in a matter of days. So, or
I'm
at the
impressed.
end of the month, depending on how that works out. Yeah, we can be impressed after we see if it actually works and pricing is like, and if they ever expand outside of Alameda, California, because one city does not a.
So you're trying to tell me I can't get this service in Florence, Kentucky?
Not yet, but you know what? We should talk to them about wiring up Florence next.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. It says $50 a month.
Exactly.
So,
and for anybody who's like, but it's only 50 megabits down, like, yes, but it's 50 megabits up, and I upload a lot of stuff that is very large files, and I've yet to, I can saturate, 130 megabits per second when I'm running a speed test, but I've yet to actually find a single app that will even come remotely close to that level of bandwidth.
Right.
And at this point, I don't have 9 teenagers simultaneously watching 4K video in my house, so I don't anticipate that level of bandwidth being filled anytime soon. We will find out. With that, ladies and gentlemen, PCPer.com is a place to find more of Mr. Ryan Shrout. You can find me at techthing.com, TEKTHING.com, or avxcel.com. That's the podcast I do with Robert Heron about home theater and audio and music and getting the most out of your home entertainments. You can find more episodes of TWiCH at twit.tv/TWiCH, and I suggest you go there if you're new to the show. We've got all the information on how to subscribe to make sure you get every episode. We want to thank everybody who's listening right now. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Shrout.
We'll see you next week on TWiCH.